Okay. Okay, great. So as I said, we're going to talk about parliamentary procedure and bylaws and policy. In addition, what I want to do is go over the new region bylaws with you and show you what changes were made as we updated them. The last thing that we're going to talk about is exactly what is your responsibility in helping to complete those region bylaws. These bylaws that I keep talking about were updated by my team of past international parliamentarians, Corey Schneider, Barbara Safer, and Shelley Swabinis. So once we updated them, then we shared them with the Women's League Exec Committee for their comments and suggestions. And then, as many of you should remember, they were then presented at the June board meeting. So I just want to be very clear, because some of you have asked, you do not need to update or change these bylaws. Each region has choices to make within the bylaws that I'm going to go over with you, that you will work with your region president to discuss and to fill in those blanks. So any questions at that point, right now? Okay, so I did send you my outline. And the first thing that we're going to be talking about is parliamentary procedure. So I want to share a few things with you that I hope will make it easier for you to do your job as region parliamentarian. Because very soon you're going to find that you're in the middle of a meeting, there's going to be a lot going on, and you may not remember how to deal with motions. So that's why I prepared a cheat sheet for you. And I am going to share that worksheet with you now. But I want you all to know that each of the files that I share, I will send them to you after the meeting. Okay. Excuse me. So that way you'll have them and you'll have them to refer to. So I don't want anyone to think, I'm not getting my notes down quickly enough or anything like that. I just want to make sure that you're all really prepared. Okay, so, okay. I have a lot of files open, so you'll forgive me. Can everybody see that clearly now?
Yes.
Well, that's good, but that's the wrong screen that I'm pulling up. I'm sorry. I have so many files open here for us right now. Oops. Let me see if I can find. Here we go. Steps to making and handling motions. Okay, that's what I wanted. So the very first step that you'll see on here is that a member is going to address the chair by saying, Madam President or Chair. I know we're not really that formal in most settings and we just use first names, but this is the formal way of doing it. The next step, as you can see, is that the president or chair recognizes that member by saying the president recognizes. And again, your president may just call upon them by name. So the member makes a motion by saying, I move to. And then the next thing that's going to happen is that another member is going to second that motion, saying second or I second. Or sometimes in a meeting, you'll hear the chair say, is there a second? And then what's going to happen once we have the second is the chair is going to state the motion saying it is moved and seconded that we, and then the president is going to repeat that motion. And then she's going to say, are you ready for the question? At that point, the sixth step is that the members to make the motion. And that's going to be, your president's going to call upon different people to speak to the motion.
Question, do you mind if we interrupt to ask questions,
Marilyn?
No,
well, what I'm going to do, Barbara, is after each section, I'm going to ask for questions. So okay. Can you wait one more minute? I'm just about done with this.
I can, but it has to do with number 5. What it states and what you said were different. 5 says that the chair states the motion. And then if I'm correct, you said afterwards, the president repeats it?
Yes, yes, the chair, okay, the chair is the president. Your region president is the chair. She is the presiding officer in all of your meetings. So whether I use the term president or presiding officer or chair, that's your region president.
Okay, so I was imagining a chair of a committee making the motion.
Okay, that person, the chair of a committee, yes, can certainly make that motion. That's the member.
Yes.
Okay,
So
in this handout that you're going to get where it says president or chair, it's all going to be referring to the region president.
got it. Okay.
Okay, sorry for that confusion.
No,
Okay,
perfectly fine. Thank you.
no, good. Thank you. I'm glad we cleared that up. Okay, so after the members have debated the motion, then what's going to happen is your region president is going to put the motion to a vote saying all those in favor of, and then she's going to mention the motion again. Please raise your hand. Count those votes. All opposed, please raise your hand and ask for then abstentions. And then your president is going to announce the results of the vote saying that either the ayes have it and the motion carries, or the nays have it and the motion is defeated. So that's what I have. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute on that. And that's what we have for making and handling motions. Are there any other questions? Yes, Eileen.
What happened if a motion's tabled?
Well, we're going to get to that in just a minute. Okay. Colleen.
Okay. Sometimes when you have a lot of discussion, a lot of people, somebody's going to raise their hand. They're going to be recognized to call the question.
Mm-hmm.
And then there has to be a second to call the, then they'll ask the person, the chairs would ask the person if he would mind the question, waiting for the last person to make their comments and then vote on calling the question.
Right. Right. And just because you've all been a lot of different meetings and have seen all these different possibilities happen. Okay.
Questions?
Go on, Barbara.
Do you need a quorum to do the vote?
It's not a quorum to do the votes, it's a quorum for the meeting. In other words, in order to have a meeting, anything within the meeting happen that to be recognized, yes, you need a quorum. And that's one of the things that has to be filled out in the region bylaws with how many people or what percent or what number that you are comfortable having. So if you don't have enough people to have a meeting, then it's not even having enough people then to have the votes to do any kind of motions.
Okay, second question is, during the discussion, I've seen this numerous times. Let's say the motion is to make a donation of $500.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a discussion, debate, and someone says, I think we should make it $100 because of X, Y, and Z.
Okay, so that's actually the next thing that I'm going to cover is about amending motions. Is there any other questions just on the basic motions right now? Okay, then let me pull up the file on amending motions. I think that's why it's not coming up. Okay, how to amend motions, which is the question that Barbara was going to just started to talk about. Because what's happening, in some meetings is that we had a motion that's been made, and step 6 is during the debate on how to handle and make a motion. And then what we realize as we're talking, that it may be like what Barbara said in the case where we want to give less money. We don't have that kind of money in our treasury. So what we want to do is we want to amend the motion so that way we can make it better. So this file, which again, I will share with you an email to you afterwards, this talks about how to amend motions. So the first rule to remember is that amendment must be relevant to the motion. For example, if the motion is to have ads in a region tribute book be priced at $18.36 or $72, you could amend that motion to say that you're going to add in $54 to the ad. And Barbara's example of reducing from 500 down to 100 would be the same type of an example where you could just simply amend the amount in there. But if someone said, well, okay, I think doing these tribute book ads at 18.36 and 72 is great, and I want to make sure that the money goes to the scholarship fund. Well, that was not part of the original motion talking about how to use that money. So that you cannot put into an amendment. So the other thing that I want you to remember is that an amendment cannot reject the original intent of the motion. So again, going back to the example, if you collect money from the tribute ads for scholarships, saying you want to use them for women in your region who attend Women's League Convention, you cannot make an amendment saying that you want to put it in your Sunshine Fund.
So in other words, at the next meeting, someone who tries to make a motion on how to use that money would not be permitted to do such.
That would need to be a second motion. So or what they could do, and this is I'm gonna get to in just a minute, is if they feel that they want to just totally throw out the motion that was on the table, what they can do is they can just vote to defeat that and start all over again.
Okay.
So it's
Get in.
On the side, re-handed.
I'm sorry, we're getting some feedback, extra noise. Okay. So Barbara, if it has to stay within what the original motion is looking for, and if it is something that is a different intent or not part of that original motion, it has to be a second motion, or you can defeat the original motion and start all over again.
So defeat the original motion. So if the original motion was on week 1 and we said $100
Right.
to scholarship, and then on week 2, after the money has already been received, week 2, someone can make the motion to defeat the original meaning week 1.
No, not at the same meeting, at the same time, not on a separate time, okay? So this would all be happening at the same time. If someone says, we want to give $100 to the scholarship fund, and you make that motion, it's second, it's discussed, and it passes.
Yeah.
And then a half an hour later, someone comes back and says, I really think maybe instead of that $100, we should really be doing $500. If this motion has already been passed, then what you're going to have to do at that point then is create another motion that's going to override the original motion.
Okay.
Okay.
So my question is different then.
Okay.
So my question is, week 1, September.
Right.
The motion comes up and it's second and voted in favor of.
Right.
Putting the money that's collected towards scholarship.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Then the event takes place, they have the money, and let's say that it's only $36 that's collected. So at the next meeting, someone then makes the motion. I'd like to make a motion that we put the proceeds of $36 towards the Sunshine Fund and not scholarship as originally planned. Are you permitted to do that?
No, you can't. You can't. Those money, everyone agreed upon that's what that money should go for. And that is where that $36 would go.
Okay, so you cannot defeat a motion that's already been approved.
No, you can't. You're right. Once it's approved, it's like, you know, that's done. And if somebody wanted to make a motion to put money into a different fund, that's a brand new motion. And it's not taking that money from the original intent of the first motion.
But if it's the same meeting, and the first motion is that the money collected will go to scholarship,
Mhm.
and later on in that same meeting, you're saying that someone could come up with a motion to defeat the original one?
Well, no, because the discussion is then over. You've had your discussion.
Uh-huh.
You've had your vote. Everyone has had that opportunity. Just because someone doesn't like the way that vote turned out doesn't
Yeah.
mean that they can then come back and say, I want to vote all over again and change it. You've already
Okay.
made that motion.
So then can you then re-explain about defeating, when you used the word defeating before? In what context did you use that?
Well, simply when you vote on a motion, you know, the president is going to say all those in favor of, raise your hand and say,
Yeah.
or say aye, or all those opposed, say no, or raise your hand at that time. So if the people who are opposed to the motion outnumber the people who were in favor of the motion, then the motion's defeated.
Oh, of course,
So
of course.
yeah, so the time for this person to want to have like a different purpose for the money is during that discussion.
Okay.
It's not after a motion has already been passed and agreed upon by the group.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So again, talking about how you can amend a motion. The amendments allow you to make changes here in one of these ways. You can insert words or a sentence or a paragraph. You can strike out the words, sentence, or paragraph, or just strike out or inserting, you know, different words. Or then it's a substitution, which is a form of striking out and inserting, but it applies more to paragraphs and entire motions. And then what I want to make sure you all know is that one of the ways that you can change a motion is if it becomes too complicated. Because sometimes, as you know, you go around and you talk about it and people start adding in additional little details, it can be best to defeat the original motion and just start all over again, rather than starting to make these small changes here and there. Just take a vote on that original motion, defeat it, and then have somebody else present the motion again and start all over again and take a vote on that new motion. And the last way to deal with a motion is to send it to committee. So if you have started to spend a lot of time discussing a motion, that's really not appropriate at a board meeting. If there's that much discussion and concern about a motion, then it would be the right thing for the presiding officer, the president, to say to the committee, you know what, there's been a lot of questions that have come out here, a lot of concerns. I'd like the committee to go back and rework the motion and bring it back to us at our next meeting. Okay, questions?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna stop screen share so that way I can see everybody and see if there's any questions that anyone has.
Well, that would be considered tabling, wouldn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what we did
Absolutely.
at our meeting. We
Right.
were discussing, and it turned out, once it came back at the next meeting, it didn't have to be a motion. It didn't have to be approved. It was already a line item in the budget. So
Right,
we said, go
right,
for it.
yeah, 'cause
Done.
you have it in the budget. Yeah, absolutely. And I want to welcome, I see we have Francine is joining us, excuse me, not Florence is joining us from Metro North. So Florence, you don't have to unmute, but thank you for getting on at this time.
Is she on?
Yes, I can see there's a screen there. So
Okay.
she doesn't have the video up, but she is there.
I see
So-
a Martin.
Yes, well, you know, a lot of people
Oh, so
share.
that's, okay,
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
So
So the-
question,
Yes, Barbara.
so if it is a new region president, a new
Right.
region president who's not familiar with the protocol, as you described,
Mhm,
and the conversation's going on and on and on,
right.
is it appropriate then for a parliamentarian to then
Yeah,
intervene?
it's a great question. So first, let me share with you that I did a workshop for all the new incoming region presidents to teach them about parliamentary procedure. So that's the first thing. And I think that what I would suggest you do is to speak to your region president and ask her, how would you like me to handle these things? So that way you have this all planned out in advance,
Yeah,
and it doesn't happen that even though you may not mean it to embarrass the region president by saying, you know what, this has been enough, I'm the parliamentarian, I'm stopping it. You know, you don't want to, like I said, embarrass the region president. So if you talk to her about it beforehand, so that way you have a way of communicating with her. What you might want to do, depending upon how everybody's doing meetings, is maybe have some kind of agreement where you say, I'm going to text you if you know, I think that there's something that needs to be done differently, or I want to tell, you know, share something with you, or it's time to move on from the discussion. If you could try to do something like that, you know, rather than necessarily speaking out in the group, you might find that that works. However, if your president feels differently and says, no, just jump in and say, you know, it's enough already. But discuss that with your region president. You
makes
know?
sense. Thank you.
Yeah. You know, because everybody's got different style, and we want to try and adapt to that. You know? So thank you. It was a good question. So the next area that I want to talk to you about is parliamentarian myths. So I think that we've all been told different things that we believe are true. How many of you were told that when you were growing up, if you went swimming right after you eat, you're going to get cramps, right? Yep. I see you all shaking your heads, right? Yep. So while the body does use extra blood and help you digest, it's really not enough to prevent your arms or legs from doing the work that they need to do in swimming. You know? So that's one myth that we all had. And the next thing that we're going to look at is some parliamentarian myths. And once again, I'm going to screen share and hopefully pull up the right one. Well, let's stop share on this one. Let me try this again. Screen share. Once these things seem to get on the screen, they don't want to disappear. All right, so parliamentarian myths. First myth is that the president doesn't vote. As you can see here, it says actually the president can vote if it's by ballot where the appearance of impartiality can be maintained. The president cannot cast a vote to decide in a tiebreaker. You have to keep voting again and again, possibly, until you have an actual decision. Next one is the parliamentarian decides on procedural questions. Ladies, you're off the hook because it's your job to advise the presiding officer, that's your president, and give an opinion when asked. Any ruling on a point of order is done by the presiding officer, your region president. So it's important for you to know about parliamentary procedure so that you can help your region president. Next myth is that Robert's rules are a guide and you don't need to follow them. While they certainly are helpful, if you've adopted them as your decision-making procedure, then they are binding. And in our region bylaws, Article 11 states that you are following Robert's Rules of Order. And I will show that to you when we go over the bylaws. Another myth is that all motions need a second. Then that's not true. If a motion comes from work that has been done by a committee or board with more than one member, then it does not need to have a second, as it's already been approved by a majority. And the last myth is that seconding a motion means you agree with it. So that, again, is not true, because it only means you think that it's worthy of discussion. You might be hoping that with a discussion that more people will disagree with it. Are there any questions on these myths?
Can you give an example for number 4?
Oh, sure. If let's say you had a committee that's done work on the region level, let's say you're going to have a region Torah Fund study day of some kind of example, you know, and your Torah Fund vice president comes to the board meeting and says, you know, these are the things we've discussed, and I'd like to make a motion that our Pacific Southwest region holds a Torah Fund study day on Sunday, January 30th, and that it's going to be held by Zoom, and we're going to charge, you know, $18 a person, and at that point, because all of that came out of the Torah Fund Committee's work, it does not need a second.
Even though it involves a dollar amount?
Even though it involves a dollar amount. So you can still have a discussion, Barbara, about that whole motion. You know, you don't have to vote for it. You know, once you have a motion and you have a discussion, if you feel $18 isn't enough and you want to have $36 be the amount, you can vote against the motion, or you could possibly amend the motion during the discussion. If during the discussion, a number of you point out, you know, I think it's going to cost us a little bit more money, maybe, you know, we should be charging more than 18, you can make an amendment to the motion saying that I think it should be $36. And you can do that. And then the new motion would be that $36.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm just going to stop screen sharing and then just see if there's any other questions before we go on to the next part. Okay. All right, great. So the next area that I'm going to talk about is the differences between bylaws and policy.
Yes.
Okay, so bylaws define the governing and operational rules of the organization under which the board of directors operate on behalf of the membership. They specify when the board meets, when the membership meets, the term of office for board members, how they're elected, and other matters related to running the organization. And you'll find all those different things in your region bylaws. Policies are set by the board and used to define the operations of the organization. So some examples of region policies that I know you are familiar with could be having a sunshine fund and how to use it. Or it might be to have scholarships offered for region conferences or women's league conventions. And what are the requirements to receive one? Bylaws can only be changed in most cases by a vote of our membership, and policy can be changed by board decisions. So because of that, it's much easier to change your policy, as it's going to require a much smaller group to agree on the change. It's just your board. You start changing your bylaws, then it's going to involve your whole membership. That was why the region bylaws that were updated while we discussed them at the Women's League exec, we brought them to the board and in June to have everybody sit and hear them. So that's the differences that they have between bylaws and policy. If you make any motions, they should go in a policy book, so that way you have them later on someplace where they can be referred back to. Your bylaws are just going to stay as they are once you've completed them and filled in the blanks, and you're not really going to be touching them. But you might come up with policies during the next 3 years in your region that are going to change what it is, how you're going to operate. Any questions on that? Yeah, Fran.
So I understand the difference between policy and bylaws. When we do this updating, and I understand the bylaws have already been updated, we're just filling in some blanks.
Correct.
Do we need to get have board approval on filling in those blanks, or can the president do it herself without having to have a vote?
A good question, and I'm going to talk about that later, but just very quickly, the president and parliamentarian are to sit down and go through everything with the blanks, and then you're going to bring it to your exec committee. And before it's finalized, and say you're going to go through those things. There may be a point that someone brings up on the exec committee. It could be the number of meetings, which I'm going to show you in just a minute. When we look at the bylaws, we put into these new bylaws a minimum amount of meetings for both exec and for general board, which were not in the old bylaws. So just because it says that there's a minimum of 4 exec meetings, that doesn't mean that that's what you are going to have to do, only 4 exec meetings. You can sit and discuss with your president. The two of you might come out and say, yeah, 4 meetings, that's enough for our region. We can get by with that. And then when you go and you sit and you meet with your exec, someone might say, I don't know if that's enough meetings. We have a lot of different things that we cover, and the exec really works hard on a few of these different programs that we do during the year. I think we really need 6 meetings to meet like every other month rather than only 4 times a year. And in that case, you're going to go back, and if everyone agrees, make that change to 6, and then have that be what your bylaws state. So it's not only up to you and the president. You do want feedback from your exec, and be flexible. Does that answer your question?
So I understand about the discussion part.
Right.
Does the exec committee have to vote or not? That's
Well, once you're done with everything in the bylaws, yes, they're not going to vote on each individual thing that you're filling in. But once you've had the discussion and you've come to an agreement, they're going to vote to accept the bylaws once it's all done and finished.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Okay. All right. So talking about all these bylaws, that's the next thing I'm going to screen share with you. Okay. This is what I want now. This is what I created, and this I sent to you, this file in advance, just in case anyone wanted to really take a look at it. And so what I did in making in this file was I set it up so that I put the changes, I highlighted them in yellow, and I'm going to go over the changes. And then anything that is something that you and the region president need to fill out, I put that in a turquoisey kind of highlight. And so that way everything hopefully will be very clear as to what needs to be covered. So again, I'm not going to go through word by word of the bylaws. I'm going to go and discuss the major changes with you so that way you have all that information in case. And you can share this with your executive committee and with your board. So the very first big change that we had is under Article 2, mission. And you notice I highlighted the word affiliates. And what we're trying to do is to recognize that many of our sisterhoods are not using the term sisterhood anymore. They're using women of particular synagogue or women's connection. Some are using women's league. So throughout the whole bylaws, any place where there used to be a word sisterhood is now being changed to affiliates. Now that doesn't mean that we don't still have sisterhoods, we do, but you can also use the term sisterhood affiliate. But we want to be very clear to recognize and be inclusive of all of those groups that don't necessarily use the word sisterhood anymore. The next change, speaking of being inclusive, it has to do with membership. And you can see I have highlighted in here, anyone identifying as a woman. Now, this is all about membership in Women's League. I want to be very clear. This is not about membership in sisterhood affiliates. Okay, any individual synagogue with their rabbi is going to make any determinations that they feel they want to make. But as far as Women's League is concerned, anyone who identifies as a woman and has paid her per capita to Women's League, residing someplace within our Women's League geographical boundaries, is a member. So the next change.
Question?
Oh, yes, Barbara.
We just had this discussion last night.
Okay.
Anyone identifying as a woman, but do they need to be Jewish?
That we're going to get to.
Okay.
Okay. That we're going to get to. So again, that is going to be based upon your synagogue and your rabbi's determination.
Okay.
Okay. So if you belong to a sisterhood affiliate that a non-Jewish woman can be a member of, yes, then she's a member of Women's League. If within your synagogue, your sisterhood affiliate does not allow a non-Jewish woman to be a member, then that is their decision. But for Women's League, yes, you can have a non-Jewish member. So the next major change, as under dues, section 3, you see I highlighted region financial officer and or the / treasurer. And this was really a very simple change that we made. And it was based upon what our regions had. We received a region list of all the officers from all 13 regions. And we looked to see, how many have financial officers, how many have treasurers, how many financial secretaries, whatever it happens to be. And what we found is that not every region has both a financial officer, secretary, and a treasurer. So what we did was we wanted to make it a little easier on those regions that don't have both. And that's why the / is in there with an and or, giving them the choice of a region president, a financial officer and or treasurer, or region officer, past president. We're just trying to give them the possibilities that reflect the reality that they have within their individual regions. Before I move on, any other questions? Okay, I have next section is officers. And what we did was we tightened this up a little bit, again, based on the realities of what is there in our regions. So for one vice president, you can see we listed membership, or people used to have, still have some places, a sisterhood support, we made it affiliate support. And then what we did was we listed also, excuse me, we listed a line for additional officers needed to manage the region. For example, there are some regions that have their conference person not as chair, but as a vice president. This gives you the ability to fill in that blank and put that in there. so that that way, you know, it's in your bylaws. The other thing that we were asked to do actually by the Women's League exec was to put in an education / programming vice president. Not every region has both, but Women's League is looking for you to have at least one of these, and that person be the point person in case there's somebody on the individual, on the international board who's looking for someone to contact within the regions. So again, we tightened up the number of officers, and yet we're giving you the ability to add as needed. There is an appendix, which was not part of the file that I sent you, but I will send it to you, in the region bylaws, listing another several dozen possible, not just officers, but also chairs that each region might find. And the reason we put that in there is simply because sometimes regions never thought about having a particular portfolio, but they see, oh, you know what, in BQLI, they have this particular portfolio. It would be really great if we did that out here in PSW. I think that that would work for us too. So just to give you some inspiration, we gave you a list of possible positions. And then I'm going to scroll down, and here we've got one of the first sections that you're going to need to fill out with your president, and that has to do with terms, and where it says the officers shall be elected for a term of 3 years, and the term of office to begin at the close of region conference or with the fiscal year. This is a decision that you will make in your region for what works best for you. And then with the question about eligibility, in section 4A, you see I highlighted an individual member, and what we did was we wanted to make sure that individual members are included in terms of being eligible to be a part of the region board. The next thing in here was that highlighted in B is that when we discussed having a region president and what their requirements should be, it was felt that in order to be a region president, someone has to not just belong to an affiliate, but also has to be a member of a congregation in the region. So, okay, and then scrolling down with the board of directors, you can see over here, section 1A, elected directors. And this is just the number of elected directors that you have on your region board. So what you need to do is to go back, look at your board list and see how many, different directors you have. And you also want to make sure that when you count, that you add in for any open positions and any possible positions coming in the future. So you could make it, instead of saying the number to be 25, you could also say the number to be no more than 30, because that gives you a little flexibility going forward if you want to add on to elected directors. Scrolling down a little bit more, under this section here is under the board of directors, and this is terms. I know that there's a whole lot in there that I highlighted, that whole paragraph, but basically that's just, we felt that we needed to clearly spell out the terms for people on the region board. And so it's just, we did some working of the wording in there, which feel free, you'll look at, and it's just to make it clearer about when terms begin and when terms end. And then the next section that I wanted to show you in here This is under committees, region teams, and you can see over here, region team leaders in A. And then it's up to you and president and then your exec committee to discuss, do you want these people to be appointed by the president with approval of the region board of directors, or maybe only just the approval of the nominating committee? Or do you want them nominated by the nominating committee? I think for many of our regions, from what I know, it's the nominating committee that goes to someone and says, would you like to be the membership vice president or Torah fund vice president? But if there's a region where the president ends up doing that job, then that's how you would fill out that blank. And also too, you know, when a time comes and you're sitting there and you're filling out the blanks and you go, oh God, what did Marilyn say about how to do this one? Just call me, email me. I put my phone number in the chat when I stop screen sharing. So feel free, you know, if you don't remember, even though you're taking notes or something like that, just let me know. Then the last part of that is just simply when the term ends. And that's going to be just like when the president's term ends. Does it end at the end of the conference or does it end at the fiscal year? Those two should be the same. And so you're just going to fill in those blanks over there. This one over here for D, it simply, again, follows the same kind of line as we just talked about, where is the conference team appointed by the president or nominated by the nominating committee? And it's simply whatever is the custom in your region. In the next section on meetings, this is what I was referring to before with Fran, when she asked the question about meetings. So you can see we put in here no fewer than 4 times a year for exec committee and no fewer than 2 times per year for a region meeting. And the board of directors, we left as no fewer than 3 times a year. And we just gave some specifics because there were some regions that were looking for some guidance on that. Again, like I said before with Fran, you know, just says no fewer than 4. You can have monthly meetings. You can have, you know, 6 times a year, whatever works for your region. On the region conference over here on this section, again, it has to do with the date and place of conference. Who approves it? Is it approved by your executive committee or by your board of directors? And that's really, again, this is something that's custom in your region. So you're going to fill out whichever one it is over there. Over here, the next one under nominating committee. Again, this goes back to your region custom. Is your nominating chair appointed by the president and approved by either the board, or is your nominating chair appointed by the president and approved by the exec, or is that person nominated by the nominating committee? So it's whatever's custom, that's what you're going to fill out. And then you can see that besides the chair, we put in here that there should be either 4 or 6 additional members, so that way there will be an odd number of people on the nominating committee. In case of a vote, you have a tie. Almost done. Under nominating procedure, what we did was we simply tightened up the timeline and made it a little shorter. It used to be 120 days, and we're saying now it's 90 days prior to conference. If there is somebody, when you need to present your incoming slate. And then again in B, again talking about the nominations, what we were saying is if someone is nominated by petition, not the person who's on the slate, that they need to have representatives from 3, you have to decide whether it's 3 or 5 affiliates within your region. You know, if you are a large region like the QLI, Helene, you're probably going to want to have 5 affiliates in there, you know, and have a larger group. And, you know, Rusty, in a slightly smaller region, you might want to say, okay, we can get by with 3. And so that's, again, make it easy on yourself for that. The last thing here I want to show you in blue is the terms of office with elections. And again, this is a repeat of what we did a little bit earlier, is when does the term begin? Is it at the close of the conference or at the end of the fiscal year? So that's your custom that you have in your particular region, and you would fill that in. I just want to point out over here, Article 11, which I mentioned earlier, that we are governed by Robert's Rules of Order. Okay, by this wonderful book for dummies, which I'm going to stop screen sharing for a minute so I can see everybody and see the hands. So this was presented to me when I became international parliamentarian, and I would suggest if anybody has some interest, go and get one. It should come out of a region budget to buy Robert's Rules for Dummies, so that way you can have that. You know, it's not that I'm not available, but just in case, you know, it's a handy thing to have. So what I want to just remind you again, so we're drawing to almost 5 o'clock my time, that you do not need to update the bylaws. It's filling out those blanks that we just went over with. So what you should do after our workshop, all the region presidents knew that you were going to be attending a workshop. So tell them that you attended and set a time to go over the bylaws with them. And then once you have, 1 minute, man, once you have that taken care of, when you've got over those bylaws, then you're going to want to, at the next exec meeting of your region, and then at your board, ask your region president to have some time so you can help educate your members about parliamentary procedure. That will help have the meetings run smoothly. Fran, you have a question?
I think you covered this, but I just want to make sure,
Sure.
besides the places that you have blanks, the
Mhm.
highlighted areas, especially for meetings, we can adjust that for our region. Am I correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, this is the no fewer than 4 meetings is just simply because, very honestly, we had a few regions that felt 2 exec meetings are enough for a year. And we don't want it to be that low. So no fewer than 4. If your region wants to meet every month for an exec, go for it. That's fine.
Well, I'm thinking, for example, because of geography for us, where it says, and I understand we could do it on Zoom, so it's kind of maybe it's a irrelevant question at this point. We typically don't meet in person more than once a year because we're 7 states.
Right.
And it's very difficult. So this is the minimum requirement, is what you're saying.
This is the minimum requirement. And also too, the bylaws are set up so that this is not about in-person meetings on any of these. Okay. This Robert's Rules of Order, shortly after the pandemic started, sent out something that updated about meetings to reflect the fact that we weren't meeting in person anymore. So it covers all your electronic meetings. It covers this meeting, you know, with Zoom, however you're choosing to meet. If your region president wants to send out an email about a vote, you know, something came up and we need to vote on something and we don't have another meeting for 3 weeks, you know, region president can send out an email and saying, I need you to vote on this and get back to me in 3 days or whatever it happens to be. And all those rules cover that electronic Zoom, whatever it happens to be. We're trying to stay current in today's world of what we need to do. You know, Rusty.
Thank
Two,
you.
two questions. One, once upon a time, this is a fairy tale, sisterhoods were asked to send their bylaws to the region parliamentarian. Do we still do that?
No, we don't.
Okay.
If they have a question, you know, they certainly can come to you. It's certainly something that you could put out to the sisterhood affiliates in your region and say, if you would like me to look at your bylaws as region parliamentarian, I'm happy to do that. But we don't have to have their bylaws. No.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
They'll be happy with that.
Yeah, sure.
The other question has to do with, well, I guess it was about 4 years ago, and we had a change team and we redid our bylaws. And so I know that some of the things that are in there, we will just pull out and put into the policy book because that's where it belongs. However, part of our mission statement, we had a part that we added to the Women's League mission statement that is in the present bylaws. Do we have to then, can we keep it in some way? It's really not policy. It's a mission statement. So do we?
I'd like to see it, Rusty, if you don't mind. Not right this minute, but you can after the meeting, you can send it to me. I'd like to just see what it is. Because I'm not really sure. You know, the one thing I will say is that our regions are part of Women's League. And so we have to be in conjunction, you know, with Women's League. So if you could email it to me, I'll take a look at it and maybe go to my team and get their expert opinions on it too.
It was just reinforcing our support for Masorti congregations and Israel. And it was just a statement about that.
Okay.
So
send that to me, please,
okay.
and we'll look at that.
right, thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome. The other thing I want to tell you is I know that some regions put their bylaws in a PDF form. And that's okay. But just remember, PDFs, you can't easily change them. So if you want to put your bylaws into a PDF form, make sure there's a few people who have it in Word. So that if some point, maybe, you know, in a year and a half, all of a sudden my wonderful parliamentarian team says, oh my gosh, we need to make this change to all the region bylaws. It'll be very easy for you to go back and do that. So please, you know, make sure a couple of people have it in Word. You know, any other questions?
So parliamentarians keep a policy book? Does the
Yes.
secretary keep a policy book?
It's usually the secretary on the region level that keeps the policy book. Okay, and so you know, what should come out in the minutes, in the recording secretary's minutes are going to be, we made a motion on the money that we're going to collect from a tribute book, and with all the details of the motion, that's going to be in the minutes. It's going to say who made the motion,
Yeah.
and that the motion passed, and that's policy, and that should be kept by the secretary, recording secretary. Again, it could be a little different in different regions, but yes, okay. The only other thing I can think of, if there's no other questions, is really just to say thank you all for your time and your input today. It was really terrific to be with all of you. And I will send you all those different flyers that I put up. So you'll have all that as hard copies. And that will make it very easy for you. And I think in that email, I will put in my phone number also, rather than just put it in the chat, because that chat's going to disappear and you'll have it in the email. And I think, you know, just any other questions before we say goodbye? Yes, Eileen.
Nancy.
Oh, well, no, Eileen had her hand up too.
Oh,
That's okay. I saw Eileen first, but
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to reiterate, sisterhoods do not have to send us or consult region on their bylaws.
No, they do
So
not.
then, does the parliamentarian have anything other to do with the sisterhood affiliates except to say, any questions, get a hold of us?
You know, we don't have a direct role on the region, but, you know, in terms of, you know, other than just checking in with them, do you have bylaws? Do they need to be updated? Yeah, bye, Fran. I know you have more meetings. Yeah, yeah. You know, so no, you do not have another role, but you're helping the president at the meetings. Okay, that's really, you know, it's more unless the region role on the, you know, for the president than it is to deal with our sisterhood affiliates.
Just want to make sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Nancy.
First, thank you for tonight. It was very informative.
welcome.
Secondly, are you're going to send us all the
Everything I screen shared,
everything that was
yes.
on the screen you'll send us.
Right, I did, because I wanted you just to kind of listen and not be reading all of those things at the same time. So, but if you read them over and you have questions, you'll reach out to me and happy to schedule a call or a Zoom or whatever anybody needs.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, good
Carolyn?
luck. Oh, but Debbie?
Hi,
Yeah,
just
hi.
quick question. So the attachment that you sent us did not
Yep.
have the highlight on it.
It
Yes,
didn't.
it did. Mine did.
Okay.
When you print it out, it's on there, or?
Yes, when I printed mine out, it had the yellow. Well, my
Okay, I haven't printed it yet, so I'll
Okay.
try, when I print it, if it's not there, I'll let you know.
You know, Debbie, sometimes I found that if I open things on my phone, it doesn't always come out the same as when I look at them on the computer or an iPad.
Oh,
So
okay.
It might be the device you looked at, but if there's
Okay,
any
I'll try.
issues, once you get home from your visit, just let me know and I can always resend
Okay.
it, not a problem.
Thank you. And thank you for all the information. It was wonderful.
Oh, you're very welcome, you're very welcome. So I look forward to working with all of you for the next couple of years then.
Hi.
Thank you very
I have
much.
Great.
Two
Barbara.
questions.
Sure.
So when officers submit reports each month for our
Right.
meetings, parliamentarians generally do not submit a report. I mean, I could submit a report in that we've had our meeting, and then, you know, a report that I met with the president, you know, but
Well,
other than that,
No, you're not really gonna have reports during the time
Right.
period, other than this first one. You know, and this could be, you could do it in conjunction with the president during the president's report to say that we met and we're gonna go over the changes, and she should give you the time to go over the changes that you have in the bylaws and share the bylaws so that everybody's up to date on them.
okay, and my other question is, on the WLCJ website,
Mhm.
so one of the previous meetings, I was on the website and I noticed that I did not have access to certain areas that I did previously. And so I inquired, I said, oh, I can't see sisterhood and the officers. Well,
Mhm.
that's because you're parliamentarian. You don't need access.
Okay, well, I'm not sure who said that to you. You don't have to tell me. I'm not sure what you're looking for, like within the sisterhoods and our affiliates.
Well, I was going to reach out to the parliamentarians of each sisterhood to let them know who I was,
Right.
who I am, and my
You
contact
should be able,
information.
you should be able to do that. But what I would tell you is just double check with your region president first, because we never surprise our region presidents. And just say to her, I would like to get a list of all the region sisterhood affiliate parliamentarians and reach out to them. And can you help me get that? Or is it okay if I reach out to Razel and ask for that? So that's what I would suggest you do. I'm not sure how they have it set up with the limited access, but I would imagine that your region president should be able to get it for you if you can't.
So when that had happened, the president did step in because I think she was as surprised as I was, and also surprised by that, you know, the curt remark.
Okay.
And she said, Barbara, absolutely, if you need it, we'll get it for you.
Right, so
But-
yeah,
But I wanted to follow up because when we had a private conversation, I was asked to ask you, was that something that Women's League did that just happen by chance? Or is that what they're doing? That's what
I'm
they.
not
prevent-
sure. I'm
Are
not
you
sure.
able to find
That would
that
be
out?
something I'd have to
Yeah.
ask Debbie and say to her, is this a change in what the
Yeah.
access is? And that's what I have to find out.
Yeah.
you know.
Okay.
Can I
that's
make a
good.
comment?
Yeah,
I had been an area director and I had access to the entire state of Florida. Once I gave that up and became parliamentarian, my access also went away.
yeah.
So I think it is a policy
Right.
when they do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think when we're president, we have much more access. And once you're not president anymore, you lose it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you can't get the information you need.
Right.
No, your
That's all.
president can get
Yeah.
it for you.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you
Yes.
for all the great
Thank you.
questions and for your time. And like I said, I don't know that I'll get to it tonight because I have to work on dinner out here. It's still only
Oh,
just
that's
after
right.
5. Yeah, but I will get you all of the files. And then if you have any other questions, you'll just reach out to me and let me know. And good luck with filling out those
you.
bylaws.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a good night,
Thanks,
everyone. Nice
Marilyn.
meeting
Night.
you.
You're
Bye-bye.
welcome. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.